So this first video is just an introduction to what is meant by the terms of trade. So the terms of trade is an index, always referred to as an index or a ratio. It's probably better to use the word index. That compares the average price of our exports to the average price of our imports. So to get this export price index, we're measuring the average values, our average prices of a range of exports, and they're weighted according to how much we trade that commodity. So things like iron ore and coal have a really high weighting because we export a lot of them, and then things that we export less of will have a lower weighting. So it's an index of the average price of exports divided by the average price of imports. The terms of trade will increase when there's an increase in the average price of exports relative to the price paid for imports. It has nothing to do with the quantity that we sell, but if the terms of trade increases, it means we can purchase more imports for any given volume of exports. So we're getting more money per export, therefore we can afford to buy more imports with each unit of exports sold. In terms of, at the moment, our terms of trade is highly weighted to the mining sector. So the mining sector's got a high weighting in terms of, in 2014, nearly 60% of our exports come from mining. So coal, iron ore have really high weightings in the terms of trade. Key point about the terms of trade, it has nothing to do with the value of products. Okay, generally a higher terms of trade will lead to a higher value of exports because the price is higher, but we're only talking about changes in the price, not the quantity. So it's not, the balance of trade tells us the quantity changes, terms of trade only tells us the price. And the second thing is, a higher terms of trade is good for Australia because higher commodity prices do not turn off foreign buyers. Commodity prices are on global markets, which basically means when the price of commodities goes up, it goes up all around the world, and therefore there's not a reduction in demand for Australian products. Australians don't become less internationally competitive just because of a higher terms of trade, because the price is going up everywhere, and it's a signal that there's high demand across society. Demand for commodities is relatively inelastic because it's essential for countries like China, and therefore the demand for the product, the total amount of income that we receive for commodities would generally go up. So I won't go through this because I went through it in class, but basically this ton of iron ore can now buy us 10 times as many TVs in 2012 with a could back in 2000. Okay, the difference between the terms of trade and the balance of trade. So the difference is the balance of trade represents two sub-accounts within the CAD, the balance of merchandise trade and net services, and it records the value of exports and imports. So it's the value of exports in dollar figures, the dollar terms, minus the value of imports over a given period of time, and also includes the balance of net services, so tourism, education, minus those imports for people travelling overseas, etc. The terms of trade is simply an index that comprises a ratio of export to import prices. So the first one, the balance of trade, is all about the values. So in this case here, we're just looking at comparing the average prices. So the difference is the balance of trade measures the difference in the value of exports and imports, and is reported as a dollar figure. The terms of trade is an index that compares prices but not quantity or value. So as you can see, in recent times, the terms of trade and the commodity prices fell, and that was synonymous with a fall in the terms of trade. In recent times, as the price of coal and iron ore has started to increase again, the terms of trade has increased as well. The lower terms of trade often leads to lower incomes, reduced investment spending, and unemployment in the mining sector. We'll talk about that in the next video. Business investment, one of the key things that the decrease in commodity prices has caused is a decrease in business investment. And that's led to thousands of job losses, massive increases in unemployment in the mining sector. As we've moved to what we call the investment phase to the production phase. We've moved away from investing in new machinery and capital and infrastructure to a production phase where we're just basically exporting a lot of products, or a lot of coal and iron ore, but at a lower price. Talk about this a little bit later on, but this is talking about all the multiplier effects which we discussed in class. Causes of changing terms of trade. Okay, this is really careful. Remember, it's nothing to do with the amount that we're selling. So things that will cause a higher terms of trade are basically just things that are going to cause a higher price of exports or a decrease in the price of imports. So if there's an increase in global demand for our exports, the price will go up and the terms of trade will increase. If there's lower prices or decreased demand for imports, so if oil prices go down, or if there's lower wage rates in other countries that help to reduce the price of manufactured items, that will all cause an increase in the terms of trade as well because of decreased import prices. So lower wage rates in countries that we import from. A lower terms of trade the increase in global supply. So the investment, the infrastructure spending that we created in the mining sector, that caused a decrease in prices and therefore caused a lower terms of trade. Increased global demand for products that Australia imports. So if oil prices go up, that'll cause a lower terms of trade. If there's higher production costs or wages in countries we import from, that's also going to cause a lower terms of trade because import prices will rise.